A lot of the things that we've done in the construction industry historically have been because we've always done it that way. And some of the CDX challenges, we were trying to break down those barriers of, well, why?
These are true stories
of the shared pains
facing designers,
builders,
inspectors,
and operators
on our quest to
streamline collaboration
in the digital age. Find out what happens
when industry and technology
stop playing nice
and start getting real.
We are the Construction
Progress
Coalition.
And this is the Shared Pains Podcast. Welcome to episode 1 of the Shared Pains Podcast. My name is Sasha Reed, and as your host, my role is to help all of us gain a new perspective on the systematic changes needed for design and construction to thrive in the digital age. In my career, I've come to view the AEC industry through several lenses, from the trade partner or office furniture supplier to technology and customer advocate at Bluebeam, then as standardization realist in my time with Building Smart Alliance as co-founder of the same coalition that brings you to this podcast today. What I've learned in this time is that while every project and project team is unique, our challenges are more or less the same. When it comes to adopting new processes or technology, there's much to be learned from our shared success and failure. Each episode will bring together different perspectives across industry and technology to have an honest conversation about what it really takes to overcome those adoption barriers of legacy contracts or culture. The process is fairly simple. Digest, debate, decide, and deliver. We'll digest the root causes of our most common collaboration challenges, debate opportunity costs versus return on investment potential, so that you can decide which new processes or technologies will deliver the most value to your team or organization. In today's inaugural episode, we want to catch you, the listener, up on the last 5 years of shared pains felt between the original Construction PDF Coalition, of which I am co-founder, and the newly renamed Construction Progress Coalition, which is led by Spectrum AEC's CEO and CPC Executive Director and founding member, Nathan Wood. Under Nathan's leadership, the CPC recently merged with the Construction Open Standards Alliance, or COSA, which is co-founded by Benny Baltrotsky, Chief Strategy Officer for eSUB construction software. Together, we're going to digest how these groups came together from opposite sides of the industry to realize a shared vision for open standards in construction. But I will not be hosting alone. Here to check me on my perspective is Dan Smililo. I messed up your name.
Smililo Armadillo. There we go.
And I live in Texas. They actually have them here. I should know this. Smililo Armadillo. Dan is the construction technology specialist for Walsh Group in Chicago. And I'm very grateful to have Dan's technical knowledge, both from an audio recording and construction perspective, to support us in this podcast. So Dan, before we dive into today's interview, I wanted to give you a chance to discuss any recent shared pain stories you have.
Oh man, I don't know if we have enough time in this episode, but I would probably say one of my examples is we use a breadth of different tools here at the Walsh Group. And some of the frustrations that we deal with are communication from tools back and forth, whether it's a design tool to a financial tool. And it's even within the same software provider of their tools talking back and forth. And that's something that's really frustrating. And hopefully the industry can move forward and fix that.
Yeah, I have a feeling that some of the topics we're going to discuss today are actually going to touch on that directly. And some of the future episodes will as well. So that's something I have a feeling everyone has a shared pain story of. So that actually leads us now into our CPC journey. And just to give a little bit of background for myself, that journey for me started in 2013. I was contacted by Kyle Hughes, who was a superintendent from Skanska and had just finished his first paperless project. He was in the process of getting his next project set up and realized that all the success he had just gained from his past project weren't able to be pulled forward. He had to get everybody on the same page again, deploy technology and get them trained again. And he just thought that there had to be an easier way. There had to be an easier way to create standards around digital documents so that we could raise the tide for everybody and not start from scratch every time. So he reached out to me and essentially said, hey, can you please call everybody that you know? And we did. We reached out and called every general contractor that we knew. And Nathan Wood was one of the first GCs to sit around the table with us. Fast forward 2 years and plenty of architecture and engineering input poking holes in our ideas, which is the best. We have the PDF guidelines version 1.0. These guidelines have since been referenced in the Building Smarts, the National BIM guideline for owners. So it's referenced within those documents. And most recently in 2018 was picked up by the top 5 general contractors in Sweden who have implemented those guidelines as a part of their digital initiatives. So in 2016, the CPC really needed to pivot and leverage the momentum that they had gained to join forces and look for partnerships. And that's where Nathan found Benny with COSA and what leads us to where we are today. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Benny, I actually want to start off with you because I remember that COSA emerged in 2012, which is really pretty much around the same time as the CPC. But you guys were really representing a different perspective and you were focusing primarily on integration challenges. Tell us a little bit about that and what was the interest in starting the organization?
Yeah, thanks, Sasha. So I think similar to what you had saw with the PDF Coalition, we saw people struggling with integration as software vendors. Our customers were asking for more and more integrations. And I was having coffee in late 2011 with James Benham, and we were sitting down and both talking about this struggle that we were going through. And we really needed a way for our 2 products to be able to integrate, as well as other products that we were working with, if it was from the estimating or accounting side. And so at that point, we decided to say, hey, let's go ahead. We understand how to do this technically. Let's start writing these standards. Let's get people involved. And so what we did is we picked up the phone and started calling our network of software providers. So Sage and NoteVault and different companies, Z-Lean, that all wanted to integrate. And so what we were able to do is pick up a great group of software providers and vendors to create standards that were free to download for the industry. So you didn't have to be a member of COSA. You didn't have to be you didn't have to pay a fee. You could go right to the site, and you still can, to download the different standards. And so at that time, we wanted to be able to move quicker. There was an initiative going on, the AGC XML. And so what we were doing with the AGC XML is whenever we produced a standard, let's say time, we would give it to the AGC XML to sign off on. So as we started to produce standards and start getting them into place, the AGC XML and COSA actually merged because we realized that from the technology side, we were able to sort of work through these problems quicker and produce these standards. And it's something that allowed for us to work together as different companies, which then help the end users. And that's really the main point of doing this, right? We were all having the same problems. And by getting the standards together, it made everyone's life easier for integrating. And so one of the ones that I worked on was the time card standard. And it was great because you had Sage involved in T-Sheets and Jonas and lots of different people putting, NoteVault was on there, even giving input. So it wasn't just one company going through, looking at that from different sides as the producer of the time and the people from the accounting side receiving it. So that's something that we really focused on.
And that reminds me so much of the story of CPC, looking at wanting to have multiple general contractors involved, then wanting to get validation from the designer and the owner. Nathan, when you really came into a leadership role with CPC, a big part of the group was, okay, we've been successful with these guidelines. What's next? Tell us a little bit about how your efforts really pushed for the merger with COSA, and tell us what brought that about.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you remember, Sasha, I think you had pulled the cart along for long enough, and we were really looking for what is that next step. You know, how is the CPC going to grow up to see Kyle's vision of how we can really connect all open integration standards that obviously included PDF where our focus was, but beyond just that. And as I met Tom Stem, who is at the time executive director of COSA and CEO and founder of Rivet, and learn more. I was familiar with what COSA had been doing, but also learning more about companies like Rivet that were coming into this side of the industry that I had just been learning through DPR's innovation team what some of these if this then that is one online solution, or another one is called Zapier. That in that side of the world, probably in the COSA side of the world, everybody knows what those systems are, but it's a very new type of API first solution that I immediately gravitated towards as an industry professional, going, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we need to transfer data from Sage, from CMIC, from Autodesk and Procore and all the and Bluebeam and all these large platforms that we're working in, and be able to make sure that the right data is getting in the right place and be flexible enough for us to build it. So, for a year, Tom and I just went back and forth about, his vision for COSA, our vision for CPC, and how we really are the two sides of the whole, the industry and the technology, with this shared vision of how we can solve these problems together. And it's been just a very interesting year and a half plus of this merger together, and how we're so much stronger together, and really looking to bring that last piece in of the communication and the media aspect, so that we can truly be the glue between industry standards, all the industry professionals, and the technology companies that are looking to improve productivity in construction.
And one of the things that was always a topic with the CPC early on was we jumped from the quality of documents being produced to the data within the documents. You can't build in this industry today without hearing about data being the new resource that everyone wants to mine effectively. So now that CPC and COSA have merged, the very first project you're doing together is this CDX thing, which I'll let you explain about, and tell us, is this another standard? How did the merger come together for the CDX challenge, and how or will this transform anything in industry?
I guess I'll answer that by saying I'll be the first to admit that CDX can be, to a certain extent, a little bit of a facade of existing things, because the idea of a CDX, or a common data exchange, is really a certification of PDFs, like the PDF guidelines, would essentially CDX certify a PDF output. Or if I wanted to CDX certify that my timesheets, were transferring the correct data through an XML or an API integration, you would look for those CDX certified integrations. And I think a lot of that is born out of the original stigma. If anyone was at the BIM forum in 2015, where Chris Langiza and Alan Engel and I presented on PDFs as a competitor to BIM, that there actually is data within that, and got this label of the PDF mafia. And we recognized that wasn't our purpose, was to advocate for necessarily just PDFs. We wanted to advocate for anything that was ISO or other open standards internationally or nationally. And so, how do we better adapt and translate between all these great standards, and how we sort of build on top of the shoulders of the giants that have created all these different standards, and just, pick the common points, that lowest common denominator, to create some small wins in the industry and really build upon that. And I think that's where it's such a great merger between CPC and COSA, to really CDX certify all those great AGC XML standards and sort of get them up to snuff with the latest API and other languages that Benny knows a lot more than I do about.
And Nathan, I think one of the things that we've been seeing with the CDX certification, or like how you put it, Sasha, the CDX thing, is we've been working through the real world examples with CPC. And so starting in Denver last year, bringing together thought leaders from general contractors, engineers, subcontractors, owners, all together. And we weren't talking about the standards like we did with COSA and AGC. We had the RFI standard, and this is what fields are, but we were talking about the real world workflows and solving the real problems. And so I know it goes a little bit further. Yes, there's a certification, but what's happening behind it with the research that's going down with CPC now is we're looking at these real world issues of internal RFIs versus external and how those different lines go throughout, because it isn't just a data issue. And that's what we realized at COSA when we were going through. Yes, we standardize a lot of the fields, but where construction progress was really leading the way was real world workflows and understanding how the industry really works, because you have 100 different subcontractors maybe showing up with a different 2 GCs and an owner to build a stadium. And how does that real world workflow work, and how should data flow?
And one of those big discoveries that happened through just these most recent conversations with the CDX is this recognition of the need for tiers that are really based more in contract language than they are in any digital language. But we all know what an RFI is. But is the RFI, a formal design RFI? Is it just a clarification question? There are these different tiers and different statuses that I know technology has been pulling their hair out trying to understand what is that common standard. And in all honesty, industry needs to come to a consensus. And that's really where we can truly crowdsource between technology and industry. Where do we need to define things that are consistent within either certain tiers or certain levels or certain integrations? And where do we need to be flexible, because every project is different, every contract is different, and we do have to implement these in the real world.
And that's really where we see CDX certified integrations transforming the industry, right? It isn't that it's a standard and everyone's using it. It's more or less, we want to transform the industry by automating those workflows of integration, not just internally in my organization, but externally as well. And so that's really, I think, this CDX thing, right, can really help us more than on just a technology side, or just a process side. It's mixing the best of both worlds.
And as I'm listening to you, this sounds great. It sounds slightly utopic. And so the practical side of me then has to ask, what could the potential barriers be that would stop or inhibit the success of adopting a CDS certification within the AEC industry?
Well, so it is a little bit of that chicken or the egg problem with this. And I think AGC XML is a perfect example of a very pragmatic, well-built standard that just didn't get the adoption and the implementation in the industry because there wasn't enough of a need and a direct pull from the industry. So I think, the hurdle is going to be incentive from both technology and industry and other standards organizations to all want to adopt consistency and them finding the time to do that. But I think we have a creative approach because we are coming at it from all of these different sides and angles and trying to be as agnostic as possible and as inclusive as possible in what we're doing, and to really just, certify existing efforts that have gained traction and trying to really promote the knowledge sharing aspect of it and the best practices so that others can adopt those successful implementations and not create, more standard silos.
Yeah, and I think there are definitely hurdles. I've been working on this for 10 years now, and even gotten into it about 10 years ago and thinking, well, all these other industries are integrating, why can't we? And I think that from bringing as you're saying, the end users in, bringing the technology providers in, and finding owners and general contractors and subcontractors that care. And we're starting to see that now, because what are we trying to do is build a building faster, safer, under budget. And these are different things that we can do to make this happen. And so getting the right people together and getting the right people at the table before the industry in the last 10 years had been very risk shifting. It still is. And what I'm seeing now is people coming to the table. And yes, contract has a lot to do with this. I know it's sort of weird because we're a technology group and we're a nonprofit, but why am I talking contracts? But that's one of the largest hurdles is the contract language, how it's set up today can sometimes create this risk shifting environment that's less collaborative, but we're seeing more lean, more IPD, design build type jobs that are becoming more collaborative and that force these types of integrations.
And I'm curious, so we have, Nathan and Benny's perspective, both from kind of on the inside pushing for this, but I'm curious to get Dan's perspective, where more in the reality of the day-to-day of a project. From your side, where do you see some of the biggest hurdles in adopting a CDX certification from?
Some of the hurdles are just understanding what we want. Every day in the construction industry, we have to deal with loads of paperwork, issues left and right, understanding the risk, and really honing in on the crucial and important data sets. What do we really want to know? What do we need to connect? It's really sitting down and understanding how we work currently and cutting through kind of the minutia of the things that really are bottlenecking us. How can we get better tomorrow based on the inaccuracies that we're using today? And I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that as an industry, we're going to need to overcome and spend time on.
And Dan, you bring up a really good point, which is that in order for this to actually materialize, it's going to take volunteer time. It's going to take effort from those who are so passionate that they invest that additional time out of their busy schedule, which that brings me to take a step back and actually look at COSA and CPC together. Now that both organizations are combined under this Construction Progress Coalition, what benefits are you offering your legacy CPC and COSA members? And to Dan's point, what is it you're going to ask of them in return to try to succeed at this?
That is the $1 million question, and I think that was part of the reason we did combine forces. That both COSA and CPC were looking for ways to bring in resources, bring in funding to actually seek these visions that we're trying to share. And so what we're planning now, because in the past, we've done a couple of these open integration summits where we've had some great technology sponsors, eSUB included, sponsoring us and getting us to at least have these events, have these conversations, and produce some of these reports. But coming into 2019, we're looking to come out with memberships that's going to be membership for both industry and technology, and we'll have benefits for both sides because kind of we feel like everybody needs to truly crowdsource their investment in the future of developing our own open integration standards, and each company in their unique position should get benefits that are relative to what they're looking to get out of it, and really contribute to the same cause. So working closely with Sly, with PhotoWin, who's our director of partnerships, in formulating that membership package, and should be releasing that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and from the COSA standpoint, it's really just so much value add. So we've had such a great group on monthly calls and subcommittees and building these standards. And now with CPC, giving it that voice. So it's something that was always sort of charity work in essence. I mean, it was self-funded. We never asked for a fee before because we were just trying to move the industry forward. But now with CPC, we're going to give it a voice and just start getting more of those standards implemented. So we'll still see a lot of the same from our members and requesting what standards, putting them into play, but now asking a little bit more to how to drive this home with CPC. And that could come in the form of events as well as different certifications that we'll be going through and white papers that we've been producing. So it's really exciting stuff.
And I know from our perspective with the success that CPC had with the guidelines, one thing that we were lacking was a feedback loop, because everybody kept asking, how is it working? How did that implementation go? What are the results seen by it? And we had people throwing stories and things our way, but we didn't have a vehicle to necessarily broadcast it. So that's where Dan coming in and taking the reins of really being the technical mastermind behind a podcast now allows us to have that feedback loop where we can start reporting on some of the successes. Something I mentioned earlier before we started recording is the beauty of working with general contractors is they're all results driven. So it'd be very rare not to do something and not have a result to report. So this is pretty exciting. And the success of this, I think, will become an avatar for others who really want to make an impact on the industry. They're going to get to see real individuals who just put their shoulder to something they were passionate for and about. So my last question to all of you is, what advice would you give to someone who really wants to have an impact on the industry?
So one of the things that I would say is start with tinkering, right? First thing, if you're interested in integration, you're interested in seeing what's happened, go to COSA.build and download the standards and see what's out there. But we need to start thinking differently as well. And so think outside the box. A lot of the things that we've done in the construction industry historically have been because we've always done it that way. And some of the CDX challenges that I'm sure Nathan will be talking a lot more about, we were trying to break down those barriers of, well, why? Do we need to do it that way? And so by downloading standards, trying different things, the people that I've found that are most innovative in this industry all come together because they're all trying different things, just like Nathan found if then that. And hey, how could I use this to automate? Or Rob McKinney, ConApp Guru, he just got really bored and just not bored, but trying different things. And people then hone together. So go out, try different things, experiment, and this will help move us forward. And join organizations like CPC. There's a lot of like-minded people out there, and it's nice getting together and talking about these challenges that we're running into.
I would say, just to echo that, Sasha, we were talking the other day about a great TED Talk from Adam Grant, where he talks about doubting the default and just the importance of, looking for different ways of doing things, but then also looking for where are those consistencies. I think that's this whole new age mindset that is disrupting all industries, of agile or lean thinking that is constantly converging and diverging and converging and diverging. And when change is the new norm, it's really how do we change our mindsets to be comfortable with that change and set ourselves up to not necessarily plan better, but actually plan to react better, because we don't know what we don't know. But let's take the things that we do know, gain consensus around it, communicate very rapidly because of all the technology that we have to do so, and just get out there. I think there are too many folks that don't speak up, that have opinions that don't feel like they should. And so, doubt the default and speak up.
Yes, to add on to both of those points, I would say probably a key aspect of succeeding in the industry is to educate and communicate. The construction industry today is, an industry with shortening schedules and tightening budgets, so we need to learn from our successes and our pitfalls. We need to learn from the technology and workflows we use. It's crucial to start to learn from all of our day-to-day activities and effectively communicate to answer the questions of why did that happen and learn from our mistakes. When I was a younger member of a team, I would always ask why. Why are we doing it this way? To just understand the process, which allowed me to really understand the successes and learn from the failures. And this was crucial. This was crucial because if we don't understand why we're doing a certain procedure or task a specific way, then we'll just accept that as the common norm and, continue to do it, whether it's beneficial or not. So really, at the end of the day, continuing education and effective communication, I think, with those around you will drive you towards success in the industry.
We want to thank Nathan and Benny for the commitments they've made over the past 5+ years to advocate for this industry to adopt open integration standards. Next episode, we'll digest the struggles of managing asset data across the project delivery supply chain. We'll talk with impacted stakeholders to understand the shared pain from multiple perspectives and look to identify common sense solutions that we can all benefit from. We look forward to tackling more shared pains with you here. If you'd like to be kept up to date on CPC COSA news and events, follow the link in the show notes or go to constructionprogress.org to sign up on the CPC website.